Hello and welcome to the Fresh Air Sci-Fi stream. I'm Joe, and that's Dave, but he seems to be having some technical difficulties at the moment, and as that always happens at the beginning of every stream. So yeah, sorry about that, but I don't know why this happens at the beginning of every single stream though. It's quite funny. If it's not him, it's me, and if it's not either of us, we've got a guest on and it's happening to them. It seems like technology isn't working. So it's saying it's working your end, is it, Dave? I mean, user volume, I've got you at 90%. In fact, Dave, it's saying that you're constantly making a sound. It's like Discord has got onto the wrong port. So maybe if you check your Discord settings, maybe it's switched to the wrong thing for the microphone and it's playing something else right now. Leon, hey, nice to have you here, and everyone else. Is anyone going to join us in the Sci-Fi channel? You're more than welcome to, because it's the end of month free-for-all, so you can do whatever you like, folks. We're more than happy to have as many people in here with us, just chewing the fat. Because tonight we don't actually have... Oh, excuse me there. We don't actually have any real direction that we're going in. We're just having fun. Bearded Heretics Asda. So yeah, we'll have you on next week. Hopefully you won't be at Asda when you're supposed to be on the stream with us next week. Hey Ozzy, how you doing? I hope you're doing well as well. We're just... And you've frozen. Yeah, we're just having a bit of technical difficulties at the start of the stream, as we always seem to. But never mind, hey.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes. You're back in the room. What had happened?
I haven't actually done anything.
Oh, really?
Nothing. Yeah. I just went into the sound settings, pushed test mic, it showed everything, quit back, and it's fine now.
Okay. Obviously got caught up on something or other, but who knows what. So Ozzy, I don't know if you saw the original invite, but tonight we're just doing a bit of a free-for-all AMA. Anyone who wants to can obviously join us live on air, or just what's the other one? In the chat, that's it. But yeah, there's no real direction on anything tonight. We're just celebrating that we've managed to survive another month, and we've been in lockdown over a year now, really. I mean, I know it's been broken up, but since the first lockdown, it's now been more than a year that this has been going on for. So, oh, but we're trying this out. We're going to try and do one of these at the end of every month and see if anyone's got any questions, any topics anyone wants to bring up, any critique on anything that we've done. I think Jen, I've made a mistake recently. I think we potentially both have, Dave, is when we address someone's argument on stream, generally we keep someone's name out of it unless they're a big public figure who have said this sort of thing publicly. But there've been a couple of people that we've actually mentioned on stream, and we shouldn't have. We should have addressed their arguments without sort of pointing the finger, because it's caused them to obviously get defensive in the process and, try skirting around the issues and stuff like that, which isn't really what we're going for. We'd rather address the issue anonymously and maybe have them check it out and then go, oh crap, yeah, I can see problems with this, rather than point the finger and get someone to go, oh, well, no, this is my position, blah, 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 and get all fighty. Now, it might be that these particular people are particularly fighty anyway, and I know most of our audience will know who we're talking about when we're speaking about specific arguments, because they'll have seen it either on Twitter or Facebook or on the webpage anyway. But I still think in some respects it's kind of bad form on our part to have actually named a couple of people. So apologies for that. You guys in the chat can always point out who you think we're chatting to, but we should avoid it ourselves. But you're right though, Dave. Oh, we've lost your mic again. I don't know what's going on with you tonight. You might have to try and turn it off and on again. So, Leon, you said you were looking forward to jumping in the sci-fi chat with us.
Hello?
So, yeah, you're back. What did you do there?
I'm not actually doing anything.
It's just stopping working, then starting working. Maybe your mic's on the fritz, or maybe the laptop. I don't know.
Couldn't be.
I hope not. Oh, here we go. We got Philip. Let me switch up.
Hey, Phil.
Hey everyone. Can you hear me?
How you
We
doing?
can indeed. So I'm just going to switch it to the old. There we go.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, can you hear
Can
us?
hear you.
Okay. Nice to hear from you, like in person this time, not over text. Finally.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, nice to speak to you
Yeah.
properly.
Yeah, finally
How's your
meeting.
day been?
Quite good actually. Like I'm way I'm more relaxed now after the whole thing. So I'm taking my time and chilling a bit. And yeah, I have the time to actually properly, without guilt, look into sort of arguments and talk to people, and so that's a good feeling.
Yeah, I bet.
It's like a huge weight off your shoulders.
Yeah, it is definitely.
Have you got into any interesting conversations recently?
Not really. I mean, not publicly, at least. I've talked with Leon actually for a while on sort of the on essentialism and the theistic argument for the existence of God for a while. That was a very interesting discussion. I think. I hope he joins later on. But no. Actually, I haven't engaged in any discussions recently. I think.
Yeah,
I've watched the debate with Randolph and Maddox, I believe, the one that you linked me to, Dave.
Yeah, I watched it. It was pretty bad.
It was pretty bad.
Is it worth us
Surprisingly,
covering off?
from both sides, I think it was pretty bad.
Oh, really?
Oh,
From
yeah.
both sides?
Yeah. I mean, I was expecting sort of a one-sided thing where Randolph would get a bit in trouble, but like I think there are other criticisms of Randolph's position that could be made that are way better, a better approach to what Maddox. I haven't heard of him actually before the debate.
Yeah, no, he's always like that in his debates, just kind of cocky and arrogant, and all he really did was argue the definition of atheism, and like you said, a much better approach to attack Randolph's argument.
Yeah, I mean, he was arguing also like from just like quoting different sources, and I don't like that's one way I guess you can do it, but I find it a bit unproductive. I think it's generally like a better approach to just go and maybe even avoid like the whole how do you call these things, and just sort of ask questions like, well, is belief and not belief a true dichotomy? And so can you say that for every proposition or something like that? And then you do that for both the proposition that God exists and the proposition that God doesn't exist, and then you get eventually to three different positions, and then you can, I think, fairly well explain like why we should label these things differently. Instead of just saying, oh yeah, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy is saying this, so it must be the case, or something like that. That I generally don't find a very, very good approach.
No, I agree with you there. The only time I think it's worth linking is when people go and start linking you to things like, I don't know, like the American Atheist website, and say, see, it says it's only a lack of belief there.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, I can give you links too, and I can give you links to people who are actually in the field of philosophy rather than the American Atheist site, who are looking for the most broad definition for ideological purposes because they want to increase their numbers. But yeah, no, you're right. It's better to address things.
Yeah, no, I am. I'm sorry.
I think
Yeah,
also
I agree.
it's almost better to, with how vague definitions seem to be, it's almost better to just try and ignore, what someone calls themselves, the label, because the labels are used in so many different ways that it's hard to find a consistent approach to it. So I was having a conversation today. It went back onto agnostic atheism, and it was a thread in a Facebook group, not ours. Intellectual discussion and philosophy. So you'd expect there to be some sort of philosophical grounding on the members, but the ones I was talking to, perhaps less so. I did have one very productive conversation with someone who said, yeah, I understand that the way he was defining agnostic and atheist, he understood that actually it is superfluous to say agnostic atheist, but he still feels it adds an extra layer of clarity because of the way people discuss ideas and things like that. So, I mean, that's fine. I mean, he's got a reason to use it and he accepts that it is actually superfluous. But then you still have the problem with people defining agnostic atheist in different ways. And you could see from this thread that it was really hard to actually maintain a consistent conversation because you'd be responding to one person who used agnostic atheist to mean one thing, and then you'd respond to that, and then someone else would go, well, that's not how I define it, and they'd argue against it, and you're like, okay, but it's a single thread, and I'm addressing you all separately with the way you define this particular term. But, it was all right.
Yeah, I think, I generally agree. Like, these terms are also very confusing to the people using them, I find, very often. So they don't necessarily agree on what it all means. So that's why I guess I like to just go, like, I don't even care how you call yourself, right? In a way that is the bottom line. I don't care. You could call yourself whatever you like, but the important bit is what it means, like what it implies that you call yourself in a certain
definitely.
way. And so I find it problematic when like the whole atheism thing. When I mean, I feel like you both already know exactly where I'm going with this, but
yeah.
Like Randall, for example, just insisted like that he has no position on the matter, right? Like he was saying that, oh no, I don't believe that gods don't exist or something like that, which makes me wonder then, well, does it mean that you find it equally likely that God exists and that God doesn't exist? Like, I know that these might be different propositions in a way, right? Because you're introducing likelihood into it, but at the same time, like, belief is usually, or at least it is my understanding, that it can be expressing sort of a degree of confidence, which could be in a way translated to sort of like how likely you feel that something is true. And so I didn't think that Randolph would say, at least I'm not sure what he would say, but I think that from his behavior, it's not at all clear that he would like find it equally likely that God exists or God doesn't exist. And so there is the problem in his way of using the terms, not necessarily in the way he likes to call it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Judging from the way he speaks, he just argues he has no position. And he's not even taking a stance on God's existence, so he would have to admit equal likelihood on both sides. And John Maddox should have attacked that position.
Exactly. That's what I felt as well. Like once you admit that you don't believe God doesn't exist, well then the question becomes like, is it then equally likely? I think that's the way you go. At least that's the way I would lead the conversation, I guess. Or attempt.
Yeah.
I think you're right though, Dave, because he does do that, doesn't he? Basically, whatever the last statement is, he argues against that, and then if you go okay, and you bring on to the next one, he argues against that, and then you bring on the next one, and he argues against that, and then you go, right, listen to these three arguments you've just made. They actually contradict each other a little bit. Um, and then he'll argue against that, but he won't actually address the fact. He'll do it. He'll just go, no, they don't. They're not contradictions or something similar.
Yeah, he did a lot of that in the modern day debate thing. One of the things he did as well was he defined skepticism as just doubting a proposition.
Yeah, that was.
It was kind of funny.
It was.
And the thing is if it's just doubting a proposition and skepticism in that sense will always lead you to atheism, well, what if the proposition that you're doubting is God does not exist?
Yeah. He also, at one point, I believe he was saying something like that: doubt or disbelief, like doubting a proposition is always rational, not believing a proposition is always rational. Something like that.
Whenever you're presented with a belief, not believing it is the standard position.
Yeah, and that it is rational by default, which brings me to a conversation that I think it was my last conversation, and it involved Randolph as well on Twitter, which was a bit hilarious, where someone argued that like a lack of belief in the Earth being a sphere is rational, like that is automatically rational or something like that. That was just one of the most hilarious things.
The other thing as well is that from that stance that he makes, him saying that it's rational to not believe something when presented with a belief. Well, that's a belief. So is it rational to not believe what he's saying about not believing?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get into all sorts of contradictions with that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem with Randolph. It's like you were saying, Joe. He literally just says whatever comes to mind when presented with any particular argument or statement, something that makes him sound rational and skeptical. It's like he said in the modern day debates thing, I'm trying to be the best skeptic I can be. Well, no, you're not really.
Ozzy says, I find the notion that doubt is somehow important, much less definitive, for skepticism is really inane. It's not the only thing that's there. It's, we've done a few streams about skepticism and different types of skepticism, and when people use skepticism just to mean doubt, it's okay, I suppose colloquially valid, but it's really vague, and we prefer concise language that actually explains what we're talking about. And if we have to then go but yeah, I don't know, frustrating. Outdone says, yes, the lack of consistency is Sorry, Dave, I was just reading out one more comment and then I'll go. Outdone says, the lack of consistency is a major problem. It's one of the main reasons to use academic standards. It's so much easier to understand what people are talking about. And that's very things like science, and you think about how evolution or theory is used in science, you'll be using it as science does. And if you're talking about a specific type of science, if you're talking about biology and you mention evolution, you're obviously talking about biological evolution, but there are other ways evolution is used in science as well. And you wouldn't think if you're having a conversation about cosmology and you're talking about evolution, you're probably not talking about biological evolution there, but there's still contextually correct terminology that tells you what people are talking about. And just using colloquial terms just isn't enough.
No, absolutely. I mean, you can also sort of take a virtue epistemology stance here, where applying the right amount of doubt is good, but just doubting everything it's going too far one way. It's you want the mean, not the edges.
That's a really good point, actually, putting it in terms of sort of virtue and vice. So, I mean, I don't know if any of you have watched any of our streams on virtues and virtue ethics and stuff like that. But an example of that is if you think about bravery, it can be brave to step in and stop getting someone being mugged. But if there are 10 people all with knives and guns and you're there with nothing more than a phone, it'd actually be stupid to step in and do that sort of thing. You'd be a little bit irrational in that sense. And you can say the same sort of thing with doubt. In fact, I find that with pretty much any position that is too extreme one way or another, you're missing a lot more than what is needed. So yeah, great way to put it, Dave.
Yeah.
Sorry, Philip, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to I totally agree also on the clarity level for the definitions. I think you can make a compelling case that you should use atheism as the proposition that God does not exist, because even if you defined atheism as a lack of belief, you would still need follow-up questions to understand exactly what it means for this person. Because you're just saying something about, again, a lack of belief, but you might be an agnostic in the traditional sense, or you might be I don't know, what I would call an atheist. So you're still very unclear on what he actually, what his position is on the whole thing. So that's also, I think, why atheism defined just clearly as the proposition, or belief in the proposition that God does not exist, or gods don't exist, is just easier, I think.
It does. Yeah, it is. And it makes for, like you say, clarity of language and easier.
Yeah, it's clear communication immediately. You understand exactly what this other person is saying, and you can start a discussion on it. And in the other sense, you just have to first sort of unpack that, and very often you get pushback against that, because of course many try to avoid sort of a burden of some sort. At least that's my experience, and yeah, that's frustrating very quickly.
Well, that's one of the things Randolph does. He tries to avoid having to make any argument for any of his stances, by the looks of it, apart from the etymology of the word atheism.
Yeah. That's my impression. I don't want to, I would be happy to revise my belief in that sense, but that's my impression as well, by just listening to him and interacting with him on Twitter.
Yeah, same. It's and it's a shame the conversation went the way it did on modern day debates, because
I agree.
There is an interesting discussion to be had there. I mean, he could have even gone into the whole skepticism is just claims about whether we can attain knowledge.
There are many ways that debate could have gone, and it would have been much more interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a shame.
Sorry, just to address, I'm trying to do it by text. So there was a link that was sent out to anyone. It was for up to 10 new people to join. If any of you are looking to join into the discussion tonight, once you've joined the server, give me a shout and I'll give you permissions to do it. So Ozzy, because you're on a new account, I have I was waiting to get you the permissions. So you now have permissions on your new account to join the channel. You should be able to see on the left hand side the sci-fi channel, and you can jump in that. So tonight is a free for all. So everybody who joins the server for today and today only will be given the permissions so as a sci-fi guest. I will be taking this off until next month, unless you're going to join us live on other streams. But there is a link for up to 10 people on the discussion thread. So anyone that joins in, oh, so it's saying invite invalid. That's interesting, Ozzy. It's just said that you joined 10 minutes ago. I can see it on my screen. I don't know why. There's also someone called Martin Pine who's just joined, who I will give permissions as well in case they want to join us. So that's weird that you can't see it. You say you've got no channels. You can't get past invite invalid. When you're looking at Discord, can you see our server there at all, Ozzy? Because the reason it's showing up as invalid now is you've already clicked it once, so it knows that you've already joined the server. So within Discord, on the left-hand side, you should be able to see a list of channels. And so if you click Answers in Reason, then once you're in there, there's a list of text channels and voice channels. I don't know what's going on then, Ozzy. I mean, maybe if you... it's a shame. I'd love to have you on here. Yeah, as Opie says, restarting and updating Discord sometimes helps. Yeah, Opie, would have been great to have you here today, dude, but no worries. I'm sure we'll have you on again in the future as well. So, yes, just to reiterate, you know, the end of month free for all, anyone can join and have just a general chat. You know, we like discussing things, we like searching for truth. Right, Chris, I'll give you a chance to join as well. So there we go. But as I said, the guest permissions will disappear after today. It's a temporary thing, just for the end. You don't have the Discord client on your computer. Never mind. Ozzy, we'll sort it out again. I still would love to have you back on the stream in the future. I'm sorry we haven't had a chance to do it. I don't know if you know, but I'm currently going through like a house move. Like you can probably see in my camera, there's a bed up against the wall there. Like there's boxes all over there. There's boxes upstairs. Everything's a complete mess. So I haven't had much time to think about what we're going to do on a stream or anything like that, but I'd love to have you back on. So anyone else who wants to join, feel free. I'm sorry for cutting you guys both off there, and I've now chatted bollocks for so long, I don't remember what you were saying. Looks like Dave doesn't either. Dave's not here.
Dave's not here, man.
Dude, it's Dave. It's me. It's Dave.
There is only Captain Trolley Collector.
So, I mean, Philip, you recently passed. How much more have you got to do, or is that it? Is that the end of things for now?
That's it for now. So I have a degree now, and yeah.
And what are you going to do?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. Trying to figure it out. I'm not sure yet exactly.
You spend so long doing the degree that once it's finished, you're like, wait, what the fuck do I do now?
Yeah, it's a bit of a black hole now. I have to figure stuff out. Anyway, I have like another conversation topic that I've recently encountered is like there was someone saying that or I don't know if complaining is the right way to put it, but they were saying like if you become a theist again after being an atheist, everyone is like celebrating. But if you deconvert and become an atheist, that like everyone is saying that you should learn like philosophy and psychology and all these things before you do that. So sort of like exposing a double standard in the whole, like depending on which way it goes. And there were some interesting comments around that, with people saying like that that people like me, I suppose, and probably like you, are sort of implying that atheists cannot be rationally justified without studying philosophy and studying like all these apologetic arguments and stuff like that, which like I found very untrue for me, at least. I disagree with that strongly, and so I was hoping to see what you think on that.
I'd have to sort of agree with you. Do you remember the example I gave about how a creationist, even though it's an irrational position, can be rational to hold a young Earth creationist position?
I'm not sure.
So, I mean, this is obviously attacking it from the other end. But I mean, imagine if you're in a particular commune. So there's this young Earth creationist. They're in a commune. The only books they have is the Bible. They've got no internet, no access to the outside world, and all the religious leaders just tell them about the world being, 6,000 years old, etc. Every bit of knowledge and information that they've got leads to that belief being, justified. And even though it's an irrational position, they're justified and be irrational, or at least as rational as they can be, with all the information available to them. Now, if they're suddenly introduced to more information, they then ought to examine that information. And if we talk about dating methods and things like that, then all of a sudden they're not as rational as they were. In fact, they're probably irrational, because all of a sudden all the evidence actually points to an older Earth. So you could say the same thing for an atheist. I don't think you need to be subjected to all the apologetics and arguments for a God to be rational, to hold a belief that gods do not exist, or even just lack a belief in gods, whatever definition of atheist you used. You can be a rational atheist. You've just got to show that you've been thinking of all these different problems. But if someone does present a new argument for God's existing to you, then you ought to be able to sit there and sort of go through it and work it out. And once you've done that, and then you're still in the same position, and you can justify why you don't accept that piece of apologetics, then you maintain a rational position. So I don't think you have to know all the philosophy or being subjected to anything like that.
Yeah,
hey Chris, how you doing?
I agree with that. I think the way I see it is very similar. I think you don't have to know all of philosophy or stuff like that to be rationally justified. But if you engage in these topics online, and if you actually want to have discussions on the matter, I don't even think that at that point probably you need to know all these things. But certainly if you're critiquing someone's position at that point, there is a threshold at which you start to you need to understand what the other side is saying, not just merely saying stuff or expressing how you feel about it without actually understanding what is going on. I also think that many times people say stuff there are many non-sophisticated arguments for atheism, for example, and that these are not valid in some way. But I don't think that's actually valid is not the right word, probably. But I don't think that's true. I think that even a very sort of low level, if you will, atheistic argument can be rational and can be a good way to believe that God does not exist. But it probably was addressed at some point in the literature from the opposing side, and so there's no downside in knowing that literature. At best you'll discover that whatever was written is garbage for some reason, or that it's not that good. That's the best case scenario, and at worst you'll find something that you have to think about, and then you go on and think about it, and then maybe come up with something better. So I don't see it as it just, you can't lose in my mind in that sense.
I agree. It, like you said, though, it's just not necessary to have studied all the literature. I mean, who has that kind of time?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree with you. Although Ozzy brings up a point. If one can be rational being an atheist, absent of knowledge of apologetical arguments and evidence, then by parity of reasoning, one should be able to be a rational climate change denier without knowing the arguments and evidence for climate change. I mean, technically, yeah, I think even though it's an irrational position to hold, if all the information that they have is telling them that climate change is false, then they are as rational as they can be in that position. It's just the fact that there are so many arguments out there. And if they're being willfully ignorant to the information, if people are presenting them arguments, they're going, no, not going to listen, la, 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 la. Okay, then they're being irrational. So I think that any position you hold, though, you should do some investigation. So to come to the conclusion that gods don't exist, or lacking belief in gods existing, you should be able to justify that at why you hold that position. And it should be a bit more than not evidence, no evidence. No, they should be able to actually quantify why you don't believe in gods existing, or why you believe gods do not exist. Right. So, 3 rusty nails. So on what you're talking about on YouTube. So yeah, I mentioned this earlier. So this is our end of month free for all. What I need you to do is click the invite link for Discord in the discussion under the notes for tonight's show. It'll allow you to join the server. As soon as you join the server, it gives me a notification and I can give you permissions to join the sci-fi channel. So yeah. So Ozzy says, but the issue is not if the person is rational, but if the position held is held rationally. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think, like I was saying, I think you should do some investigation into arguments for and against certain things, like you're saying with climate change. But there is an issue where if all the information that you're presented is saying a certain thing, it makes sense to believe that information. But I think with climate change, there's so much evidence that's thrust in your face about how climate change is happening that I can't imagine someone can rationally hold that position right now. But like with atheism, I don't think you need to know all the apologetics and all the arguments, but I think you have to have thought about your position quite well and be able to address some of them. And if someone presents a new argument, then you have to consider it and see if your position changes and be able to rationally, get contest and describe why you either do or don't accept said argument. So if a normal, sane person doesn't believe in climate change with no knowledge of the arguments and evidence for climate change, is the position held rationally? He would say no. What would you say, Dave? Apparently, he wouldn't say anything right now.
I was just rereading the thing.
Yeah, Ozzy, you're right. Climate change deniers are people that have not considered the evidence, and that's what makes it irrational. Yes, but if they were in a commune where they had no access to the evidence, and everyone had basically just told them, "Oh, there are some people out there that say this, but it's a load of bollocks." At that point, they've got no access to any additional information or the evidence. The point that I think that we agree on is there is so much evidence out there about how it's happening that denying that position is irrational. Whereas I think it's a bit different when you're considering like an atheistic position.
Yeah, I think the difference is between whether they have rational justifications for, or there is rational justifications for what they believe, and whether the belief itself is rationally justified. And in the case of climate change, it's not rationally justified to believe it, or it's not a rationally justified position because of all the evidence. Just living in the world kind of shows you that the climate is changing. I mean, we've had a sunny, hot day here in Wales in spring, and it's like summer. You can kind of see it happening. But if you have no access to anything like that, you don't understand it, and you just say, well, I don't really notice. I suppose you can have rational justifications for holding that position, but the position itself, in the greater scope of things, would still be irrational.
Yeah,
when looked at as a third party.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just it. So as Ozzy, as you say, the climate change deniers don't lack access to the evidence. They just don't know it, and they think it makes sense to doubt climate change. They do.
Go with something like a flurfer.
Sorry?
Go with something like a flat earther.
Yeah.
You could say, well, okay, this person who has no access to greater information looks out and sees the horizon is flat and believes that the earth is flat. Well, he sort of has a rational justification for believing it's flat, but the position is still irrational because of all the things that we know and have information to. He holds a false belief. It's just a sort of rationally justified false belief.
Yeah.
It's a kind of Gettier case.
That's a good way to put it. But yeah, I do. I mean, something that is a lot more obvious and physical, like climate change, is obviously something where it's a lot more irrational to reject in that sense. But you know, there can still be rational reasons for holding particular positions, even though the position itself is irrational. What do either of you guys think on this?
Yeah, so can I speak? Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can hear you.
All right. Well, I'm Chris Mann, and I've had the back and forth with both of you over the past several months. I mean, mostly it was just last year, around May is when we started, because, you know, we had some discussions on Facebook, and that moved to your blog. I'm one of those so-called new atheists, or lack atheist, or whatever. And I tried to explain my position as best I could, and I tried to explain why it is that I tend to just say I don't believe in God. And I just wanted to make it clear that, you know, just because someone prefers a different definition than the standard that's used in most of philosophy does not mean that their position is somehow internally inconsistent or contains logical fallacies. And I was hoping, you know, to get you two, Dave and Joe, to understand my position more accurately. But as the discussion went on, you two seemed to, you know, get tired of responding to my claims, and instead you just stopped eventually, and you stopped responding to me. And I was even wondering if I would be invited to join you on this discussion. It just so happens that my schedule opened up and I was able to join today. So I hope that I'm not intruding on a discussion where you don't want me.
Dude, it's a free-for-all.
Okay.
We said it's a free-for-all, and anyone can ask anything. First of all, I will say that anyone can define things in a non-standard way. Think about the word theory, how it's used outside of science and how it's used colloquially. You know, there's certain utility to that. Not every time you say the word theory do you mean the same thing as it would be meant in science. So there are perfectly rational ways to define different terms and different terminology. The issue with just lacking belief is the fact that if you're saying that you lack belief in God existing, but you don't hold the belief gods do not exist. So you're saying that you lack belief both ways, right?
Huh? No, I'm just saying I lack a belief in God. I mean, I usually don't say it. I just say I don't believe. That's the normal vernacular that I use. I don't believe in God.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, in philosophy, there are even, I mean, it's a smaller amount, but there are some people who do argue for atheism in that way as well. So if we think about this, right, what you're saying is there's a proposition called, that, for example, that says God exists, right? So we can phrase that as a question, is it true that God exists? Yeah? So if you're answering this proposition, there are 3 direct answers to this proposition, right? So if you say yes, God exists, you're holding the belief God exists, yeah? And if you're saying no, you're saying, oh, well, you know, no, God does not exist. So you're holding the belief God does not exist. And if you're saying I don't know, you're not believing God exists, but you're also not believing God does not exist.
I understand all of that. And so in that framework, in the standard that's apparently used in the academic halls of philosophy, I would be called an agnostic by them. Okay, I understand that. I'm just saying that the way that I used the word when I was growing up, without having read anything about any philosophy books or anything, just by the way that people speak around me, that I was called an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's all I'm trying to get at. Okay, I just use the word differently. Does not mean I'm committing a logical fallacy. I already admit that according to philosophers, they would call me an agnostic, according to that test that you just laid out.
Yeah, even then, I mean, there are some people that would try and make an argument for that position being a form of atheist. I mean, the difference is, it just saying that you lack belief in God existing isn't fully answering the proposition, and it's not telling us about what you do believe. Now, so if you were to provide, when I said that yes, no, I don't know, there are three clear answers that tell us what you do and don't believe about the proposition. But if all you're saying is, I lack belief in God existing, you're not actually describing why. Now, there are other ontological positions as well. For example, an agnostic would think that the whole the proposition is not worth even considering. So by that, they don't believe a God exists, but they don't even believe, they don't accept the concept of God. But that's actually a different position to yours, isn't it?
You cut out a little bit there, but I think I know what you're talking about. All right. And so again, the question that when you pose the question in terms of P, God exists, and either you believe it or you don't believe it or you don't know, when you use that formulation, it, like I said, I would fall under the agnostic category. But I just want to remind you that that kind of question is kind of like the whole question of, did you stop beating your wife? Right? Now, there are three clear answers that you could give. You could give yes, you could give no, or you could give I don't know. And so, again, it's that same kind of situation that you're tending to put me in.
Of course, and like an agnostic in response to that, I could say I've never beat my wife, so that proposition is meaningless to me. So I would take a different stance on it. I would. It's
meaningless.
Yeah, meaningless. The proposition is meaningless to me. Sorry if I cut out there. I think I've got too much running. Let me close some stuff down. There you go. I've killed my extra camera, and I'll kill Firefox. It might be just causing things to lag a little bit. So yeah. So in regards to that, there are other positions. There's three direct answers to a proposition, but there are other positions that you might take in regards to it. So as I was saying, an agnostic is one that finds the whole concept of God so ill-defined and incoherent that they don't even consider the proposition, and they find it meaningless. They don't believe in a God existing, but for different reasons than someone who has considered the proposition. You also have an apatheistic position. So someone that doesn't care whether God exists or not, so doesn't actually consider it. But again, they don't believe a God exists. There's lots of different ways you can take on this. So if we go to your proposition, like, did you stop beating your wife? You've got yes, no, and I don't know. I don't know why you wouldn't know in that situation, but let's go with it. There is other answers to that as well. For example, I have never beaten my wife. So it sort of takes it away from it, and it isn't a clear answer. It's not quite the same sort of proposition. But you could think about it in a different way. Is it true that it is raining outside? And now, when I'm talking about raining outside, I'm talking about where you are, not where I am, just for the context of it.
I'm still hung up on the idea that you would say that the question is meaningless to you, because it seems that you understand exactly what the question means, right? So for you specifically, Joe, you wouldn't necessarily claim that the proposition is meaningless, would you?
Which proposition? If you're talking about
did you stop beating your wife?
Okay, so by meaningless there, I'm not referring to the question. Sorry.
Did you stop? Have you stopped beating your wife? Did you stop beating your wife? That's not a proposition.
Yeah.
That's a question.
Yeah, it's slightly different. And that's
right.
what I'm saying.
Is it true? Is it true that Joe stopped beating his wife?
again, if we're going to phrase it that way, it's not something that is necessarily true or false, because what you're doing there is presupposing that I've beaten her in the first place. So you're starting there. So the actual proposition would be, is it true Joe beats his wife, for example? So it doesn't matter whether I've stopped or anything like that. That would be a proposition. That is something that is true or false. What you presented was a question that actually doesn't work in the same way, because it's something I have never done. So when you think about a proposition, you've got to think about it in something that can be true or false. And when you're analyzing a proposition, you've got to answer your position on whether it's true and your position on whether it's false.
All right.
You could also argue that saying Joe beats his wife as a proposition is meaningless, because the referent in the statement is not a referent to anything that's actual. So you could say that that's a meaningless proposition because it has no referent.
All right, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that you understood that, I prefer to speak in a certain way when I'm around the people around me, and so we speak of atheists like just yesterday, when I was speaking with my coworkers on this issue. I said, there are Christians who believe God exists, and then there are people who don't believe God exists. And he interrupted and said, atheists. Yeah, they're atheists. And so that's just another example. I mean, it's just anecdotal. I get it. It's just my part of the country, whatever. But that's just how I experience things on a daily basis.
Yeah, and to be honest, Chris, there's utility to that definition, because especially on the internet, that's how a lot of people understand the term. So there is a certain amount of utility to using it that way. I can understand people using it that way. I think you'll find that it's not just in academic circles that it is defined. Atheism is defined as the belief gods do not exist, or an atheist. You'll find that generally in a lot of Europe, that is how it is defined. You'll find it even in different parts of America. I mean, I was recently, I think it was last year, watching the show Community, and they were all talking about their religious position. And this person was a Jew, and I think this person was a Muslim. The girl in it was an atheist, and the main character identified as an agnostic. So there was that. Now they even made a joke.
You keep cutting out, Joe.
Do I? I hope I'm not cutting out to the live stream as well. I'll see if there's anything else I can kill. Close window. I don't think there is anything else I can actually kill at this stage. I've cut down pretty much everything. So where were we? I was talking about the show Community. How much of that did you hear?
Yeah, you said that there was a situation where they were describing their positions, and one of them said that he was an agnostic, and they even made a joke.
So they even made a joke that he was a weak atheist. But there was the understanding that the agnostic position is different to the atheist position in that regard. So it's not, even though colloquially, especially on the internet, we do see atheism defined as a lack of belief in gods, and I will admit, there is utility to using that definition, because that is how it's understood. It's not the only definition, and there are clearer ways to define your position, but I accept other people use it in a different way. And to be honest, I don't care enough anymore to even argue against them using it the way they want to. I will use their label for them. The problem I have is when they try and prescribe their label onto others.
All right, so let me just say that, one, I've never done that, and when we had this back and forth on your blog, for example, the blog itself, the article on your website, it misrepresented my position in different ways, and I responded to those. to correct them. One of the claims it made is that I believe other people should accept my the way I would label them. You know, that the whole idea of should accept, that's not part of my that's not the claim that I've ever made, that people should accept my way of labeling them or whatever, because there are vague. It's a little vague. There's a few different things I think that phrase could mean, and until you specify one of them, it would be a vague misrepresentation of my actual position. And Dave, you stopped responding to me after that, and then all these months later of silence, it was completely silent on my part. I didn't see anything. I didn't get any contact from either of you two. And after all these months, I searched for my name on a whim, and I found that you guys had been mentioning me on your show. And so I saw that Dave, for example, made a specific claim about what I believe, even though he had made that same claim on his blog in that article. And I had specifically denied holding that position. Even through all of that, he still came back on this stream and claimed that I hold a position that I already said I don't. That's one of the things I just wanted to clear up with your viewers, just in case, I don't get to talk to you again, Dave. I think it's a shame that, you stopped responding to me altogether, but I suppose that's just, I don't know.
When a conversation becomes tedious and it just goes over the same point over and over again without any productivity, or it's just a sort of, it's just a clash rather than an actual attempt to get at a truth and to come to a sort of agreement, I'll usually just walk away from a conversation. I do it all the time online.
Is it your position that even today, even in my behavior right now, I am simply clashing with you without trying to come to get to the truth of the matter? Am I behaving in that same average atheist, new atheist?
Is this the same conversation that we were having on the blog?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, with the conversation that was on the blog.
It's not the same conversation. This is a different conversation situated in a different time, and you were making a different argument and asking a different question. The argument on the blog, you came into the group and you asked Joe for a discussion about the Duke. And then you asked me to give my opinion, and I wrote a piece, and then we got into the discussion, and that discussion was going nowhere. I had better things to do.
In what way was it going nowhere? Because I specifically responded to one of your claims by saying that the phrase that includes should accept does not accurately represent my position, because mine is more nuanced.
But we were talking about Duke. We were talking about the discussion between Duke and Steve McRae, not your position.
And Duke, in that situation, did say, and we've even got tweets of him saying it, that Steve McRae should accept that other people will call him an atheist and not reject it. But Duke also said that he would not accept being called an agnostic unless you also had the tag atheist there. So Steve McRae should accept being called an atheist, and Duke doesn't have to accept being called an agnostic by other people who would do it unless they tag on the atheist. And that was what we were talking about with the special pleading. You jumped in and said that there's no special pleading there, but there is, because they're being held to different standards. Do you understand that now?
I've always understood what you were trying to say, but I'm claiming that first of all, the special pleading that Dave laid out in the original piece was not the same as the special pleading claim that you and Steve McRae make separately. Okay, so I wanted to deal with those separately. Now, when it comes to should accept, when there are multiple meanings for what should accept could mean, okay? And when you specify and you lay them out clearly, then you'll see that both sides between the Duke and Steve McRae were symmetrical in that situation, and that's what I was trying to explain. Now, Dave never responded to that.
Listen, that's not what symmetrical means in this case. Symmetrical means that Duke says that Steve McRae should accept that he is an atheist, and he should choose what kind of atheist he is. But he also argues that nobody can tell him he is just an agnostic. He will not accept just agnostic. So he's saying that words mean what he means, but not what other people mean. He gets to define what words means and what words he accepts, and says that other people should accept his definitions, but he doesn't have to accept being defined how other people define him. That's the special plating. That's the asymmetry.
That's the exact argument that you gave in your... No, I understood it. That's the exact argument you gave in your article.
You're sitting here making the same argument again, and you're not understanding the argument. You're saying it's symmetrical, but it's not.
Allow me to give a counter argument to what you just said. Once again, you are basing your entire argument on should accept, and I'm saying there are multiple meanings to that. And so when you lay out
I'll tell you what,
position...
Stop. Go ask Duke what he meant by should accept.
I've already done it.
Go with that. Hey, Jess.
Hey, Jess, how you doing? And hello to
I'm
everyone
here to
else.
crash the party.
Yeah.
No, it's a good gate crash.
Oh man, I was sitting in the back waiting to pop in because I was just like, oh, this is spicy. This is drama.
It wasn't supposed to be.
So everybody doing good then? That's
good. Yeah. You all right?
Are we arguing about Duke's nonsense? Is that what I heard?
That's basically it. Yeah, it's I mean, to be honest, I'm a bit bored of this section, so I'm really I feel like we're going around the same circles of I've cut out again. How dare I cut out all the time? I don't know what's going on tonight.
Did we get stuck in a spot?
Oh, I don't know.
I was just gonna make some mac and cheese, and then I was like, hold up. So are we deciding that words are polysemous and the word should might mean different things in different contexts? Is that what we're?
That's what I believe.
Yeah. So what can should mean? What can should actually mean then?
Well, could mean like in a moral sense. It also could be what someone else thinks might be best for you, even though it might not be what you think is best for you.
Or ought to.
Or up to, yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely an ought. There's definitely a should that is synonymous with ought. Yep.
There's like somebody in gaming who's like, if you're playing a video game and somebody says, you should kill yourself. That happens a lot. Sometimes they mean it. But does that mean you really ought to do what they've said? Well,
no.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Think you did. Yeah. So I'm just going to quickly catch up with the chat. There's been quite a lot going on. I do apologize, everybody, for ignoring your comments. I wasn't ignoring you. It's just we were having a conversation. So just to address any of them, I'd like to say hello to all new people who have joined us, especially Chesh. It's great to have you on stream for the first time.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's been...
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've actually had a proper chat with you. We've been planning on coming back on yours, haven't we? To have a conversation.
We've been talking around it, but I saw an opportunity and I jumped on it.
Yeah. I'd also like to say hello, Manny. Nice to have you drop in as well. Always great. And Mr. Serious, hello. So great to have a couple of new faces. It's awesome. Philip, shame that you had to leave, but hopefully you are back shortly. I look forward to having you back on the stream as well. In fact, it was going to be with Philip that we were going to be on your stream having that conversation about new atheism, wasn't it? We were going to talk about what it was supposed to be and what it has turned into.
Yeah, and maybe how to rectify where it seems to have gone a little bit off course, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and
so we're going to talk about what they should do.
Yes, we're going to talk about what new atheists should do. I mean, technically, we are new atheists. All of us are new atheists ourselves, technically, because we will speak out against certain religions. It was supposed.
You got to turn off your notifications.
My
notifications are cutting out the.
Oh, what notifications?
The audio, yeah.
What notifications are coming through? Because there shouldn't be any.
Are you getting them in like the Restream bot?
No. Let me have a look on this. Notifications on the Restream bot. There's no notifications on that.
Because it sounds like something goes through and then it's back. So it's just your audio just has this little hiccup. So it makes me think that you've got some kind of audio cue happening.
Yeah.
That's not like.
I've been looking at it and honestly, I don't know why it's going so weird tonight. I think it's something to do. So Outdone says it's a device disconnection notification. So it could be like a USB thing that's on a dodgy connection.
Yeah.
I don't know what that could be, although I have been having a number of issues recently. Like a loose USB cord. It could well be, although I don't know what I've got. Although one thing, I've got a little USB hub that has been on the fritz, so maybe it's that popping in and
That's
out.
Probably it. Yeah, that would be it.
Yeah. It's usually me that breaks it.
Yeah, it is. We've had a couple of problems recently with our streams, haven't we, Dave? I just need to upgrade my computer. That's the short of it. I need to sell my house, move, and upgrade my computer, and then all of a sudden, most of these problems
spend all
will
the money on your house, move into a shack, spend all the money you make from selling your house on a new computer.
Well, I am actually moving into a house that costs half the amount of this one so that I can buy a new computer. Purely to buy a new computer. Nothing else was considered in this move. It was just, I want a new computer. But yeah, where did I cut out?
Oh,
right,
you were saying... You were saying that we were going to have Philip on over on my channel to talk about where kind of new atheism was going or should be going. And then you were talking about sort of what was going on with like Twitter and.
Yeah. So
your guest here and.
Yeah. So
Hello,
technically, new atheism is supposed to be just atheists talking out against religion. So we're all technically new atheists in that regard. We've spoken out against religious claims and we've contested them, but it's supposed to be done in the right way. And I think that it has become a more dogmatic branch of atheism. That's why I wrote the article "Pitfalls of New Atheism." Because it seems a bit different. But I mean, if we're all honest, technically, we all here are new atheists because we have all spoken out against religious claims and contested religious people.
It kind of depends on what you're... Because like the old school atheism stuff with like Hitchens and Dawkins and Sam Harris, I think maybe has made a bit of a shift now, but back at the time, we're mostly not so much talking about whether or not God exists, whereas new atheism is definitely talking about whether or not God exists and your belief. Whereas the old school atheism was just talking about normalizing atheism and not having to go to church and not being dogmatic, and more talking about religion being problematic, not so much the actual whether or not a God exists. Different question.
Yeah, definitely. LB says, an atheist friend of mine is up for making a post-new atheist movement. Yeah, maybe that's what we need to do. But I think we should talk about
coming out of new atheism self-help group.
And I'm back, by the way. And
Hey.
hi, Tesh. Thank you so much for covering, by the way, my explosive tweet there. That was very much appreciated.
No, it was. It turned into quite the show, I must admit.
Yeah. There was an entire thread there that was just gold. So I'm kind of a bit disappointed that we didn't get to that, but like there was some good stuff there.
Oh, I mean, we can always go back. There is no limit on the internet. You can kind of go wherever you want. And I'm just really glad Christopher just posted what they were saying, some kind of clarification. So I'm going to catch up about what you're saying.
Okay, so I mean that was a link to a blog. So I mean, Chesh, you probably know this one. There was a debate between. Did I cut out there again? So there was
Yes.
There was some cheering going on.
There was a debate between
Duke and Steve McRae. And then you might remember that one.
Are we talking about the one on Twitter, or are we talking about the one on Modern Day Debates?
Modern Day Debates.
Okay, so the one from like a year or so ago.
Yeah, if not more. I think we'd all agree that it was quite a poor debate. I found. And Chris, you did a video, didn't you? Summarizing that video. You put a few things into your own words, and I responded to it. And I'll admit, I mean, in a lot of headed. It's done it again. Do you know what it is, though? I'm getting notifications through something that isn't actually... it's something that is... I've turned off. I turned off my turntables earlier, and it seems to be trying to constantly connect and disconnect them.
To reconnect to it, Control-Shift-Exit.
I need
and it'll bring up the task manager.
I'm in the task manager now, though. The turntables are definitely closed, and they're definitely not. The software's closed. I don't know.
Have you checked the performance tab? So you've got like the open active one. Scroll all the way down and see if it's anywhere in that. You might have to close it from being even inactive.
Yeah.
I've had stuff like this before where it tries to connect even after it's been turned off because it's got like an automatic thing that's running in the background.
Yeah. It's weird, but it's coming through the virtual audio cable, so maybe I'll kill virtual audio cables as well. VAC control panel. So if I open that and find out where that is, exit.
Worst case scenario, you can always just unplug the device.
I'll tell you what, I'll unplug that and the camera. That should, that's the device that was going off and on again. So hopefully it won't happen again. The virtual audio cables, just for responding to the chat. So I have my turntables. Before we do a live stream, I have a mix, and virtual audio cables is the thing that allows my turntables to have the audio come through to the broadcasting software. I basically have to have a fake audio cable linking one to the other. So yeah, I've lost my train of thought again, though.
You were talking about the two debates, and you were saying that that Christopher had done a video at some point about that.
Yeah. So Chris had done a video in. Oh, it's off.
I fixed it.
Unplug the device.
I've unplugged the device.
Just unplug the
I've unplugged it. I've unplugged it. It's still
it's just the software trying to be like, send help.
Yes. He did a video summarizing the debate, and I must admit my responses in some respects were a little bit hot-headed. I think one of the reasons is I'd just had a number of different conversations with happened again.
Had a number of different conversations.
Yeah, had a number of different conversations with Duke at the time. So I I was already irate by any conversation that brought Duke up, anything that was that. I was just like, because he's very good at winding people up with his inability to reason rationally. So I'll admit that a lot of my response on the original thread was probably a bit too hot-headed. Now, Chris joined our Facebook group to continue the discussion. He had a discussion with Dave on there in one of the threads, and Dave then wrote an article summarizing.
At least you know what it is now. You can catch it.
Yeah, and hang on. Maybe if I actually deactivate it from so audio, desktop audio disabled, done. So I've got rid of that. Hopefully that won't happen again now. So I've actually just removed that one completely as one of the audio things. So this keeps throwing me off.
I've been there.
It's bloody annoying. Dave then summarized the video, and Chris then responded to what was going on in the video. But the conversation ended up being quite circular. There was a lot of talking past each other, and eventually both Dave and I got bored of holding that conversation because it wasn't going anywhere. It was just addressing the same thing. We'd go, here, with this, it means this, and then the next comment would be talking about that. And it was just that constant back and forth where you're all talking past each other, and it got generally irritating and frustrating. That basically summarizes it, do you think?
Can I say something?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that the discussion was necessarily going nowhere. I think that I had several questions that I posed to both you and Dave that you never actually answered. And if you had tried to put forward an answer, I believe that the discussion would have moved forward. But in the end, you actually stopped authorizing my comments to appear on that page. And so my last comment that I made there is not even public yet.
What was the question that they didn't answer?
There was a long series of, if you go to the page that I left in the chat.
I'm on it right now.
And you'll see that I get into a back and forth with Joe. And
yeah.
He starts claiming that he's bored and that his.
But that's fine. I don't care about that. I'm trying to sort out what do you think that they didn't answer? So that way let's move on from the grudge and see if we can actually restart the conversation and see if we can go anywhere. So what do you got? What question were you trying to ask?
All right, the basic point is what my actual position is versus what they think my position is. All right. And so I'm trying to correct their misconceptions of my position, where I prefer my definitions of the words. I prefer to use them in speech, even though I know that's not how they use it in academic philosophy and all that. And so what they then turn around and say is that the Duke is forcing our position onto other people, when in fact, I think what's actually happening is that we prefer our definitions. And sure, it might be better if other people use our definitions, but we can't force them because they have free speech, you know?
Okay, so I think that's fine. I have two things then, if you guys don't mind.
Go for it.
Okay, first off, how many times has Steve, for example, gone onto the Duke's page to tell him he's wrong?
I don't know.
Past year,
on Twitter?
On Twitter, on Facebook, wherever.
I don't know.
You don't? Yeah, okay. So how many times do you think Duke has gone over to some kind of thread that has Steve in it to say that Steve is wrong?
Again, I don't know.
In the past year? I can tell you a lot. I can tell you that as far as I know, and I follow Steve, like I talk to Steve regularly, he's not interested in any kind of conversation with Duke. He's come to a conclusion about that conversation and he doesn't find it valuable anymore. However, Duke goes out of his way to find anything that has Steve on it, to then respond to say that Steve is wrong, and then brings to whatever argument to the table. So this is not a case of, oh, Duke isn't telling people that they should use his definition. He is absolutely telling people that Steve is actively wrong about the philosophical and about the definitions that he's using and why he's using them. He's wrong to do so, and he should and ought to be using Duke's definitions.
All
yeah,
right, so
I will say on that, Duke, just for context, Duke
I don't
has
know
a
about
list. And even though I've turned off the thing that was causing the problems, anyway, Duke has a list called Agnosta-Loonies. Happening. My processor isn't even at max usage or anything like that. I don't know why this keeps happening. Anyway, so Duke has a list called Agnosta-Loonies.
I'll switch off my camera.
Maybe that'll do it. I don't know.
Maybe it'll, save some.
The process, it doesn't seem to be a processor thing. I almost think I need to turn it off and on again. It's frustrating me. But in short, Duke has a list called the Agnosta-Loonies, and in this playlist on Twitter, I say playlist, he jumps on every conversation that any of the people in it have. So he actually, I got to the point where I blocked him because every single post I made, he jumped on and started trying to start the same argument again and again and again. And so frustrating. I don't know why it's happening so much. It's getting worse.
I think you should just restart the stream at this point. Like it's every 5 seconds. It's really bad.
It is ridiculous. Okay, folks, I do apologize. I'm going to turn it off and on again. I'm even going to give my computer a reboot and see if that works. So if you guys will be patient, we will be back in the next 5 minutes. Anyone in the chat, please stay in the chat, and we'll be right back. I am sorry that this has happened, but we will be right back.